Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our discussion program. Today, we are exploring a challenging question that many students, parents, and educators think about. The topic for our conversation is it ever acceptable to cheat on schoolwork or tests? It's a question that brings up strong feelings and different opinions about fairness, honesty, and pressure in education. Joining us today are two thoughtful speakers who will share their perspectives. First, we have Leo, who will argue that sometimes, in very specific situations, cheating might be understandable. And we also have Maria, who believes strongly that cheating is never acceptable. Leo and Maria, welcome to you both.
Thank you, Sarah. It's good to be here to discuss this important topic. I want to start by saying that, of course, honesty is very important, and generally, cheating is seen as something wrong. Nobody likes the idea of someone getting an unfair advantage by breaking the rules. However, in my opinion, the world is not always black and white, and sometimes we need to look at the bigger picture. The education system today can put an enormous amount of stress and pressure on students. There's so much competition, and students often feel that their entire future depends on getting good grades. It seems to me that sometimes the tests or assignments students are given are not really fair measures of what they truly understand or can do. For example, imagine a student who is usually very honest and hardworking. This student might get very sick just before a very important exam. Or perhaps the teacher did not explain the material clearly, or the test covers things that were not taught properly. In situations like these, a student might feel completely desperate and see cheating as the only way out. I am not saying that cheating is a good thing or that we should encourage it. Absolutely not. But I think that sometimes cheating can be an understandable human reaction to extreme pressure or what feels like an unfair system. It might be a sign that there are bigger problems within the education system itself that we need to address. Perhaps the way we test students, or the amount of pressure we put on them, needs to be reevaluated. So, my point is that while we should always aim for honesty, we should also try to understand the reasons why someone might feel forced to cheat.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Leo, for your points, though I see things quite differently. I believe very strongly that cheating on schoolwork or tests is not acceptable under any circumstances at all. The main reason is that cheating is fundamentally dishonest. It's a deliberate choice to deceive others. It's also incredibly unfair to all the students who dedicate their time and put in the hard work to learn the material and complete their assignments honestly. These students make sacrifices, they study late, they ask for help when they don't understand, and they earn their grades through genuine effort. Cheating completely undermines the purpose of education. Education isn't just about getting good grades. It's about gaining knowledge, developing skills, and growing as an individual. If you cheat, you don't actually learn the material. You might get a good mark on a test, but that mark is meaningless because it doesn't reflect real understanding. What happens then? This lack of genuine understanding can cause significant problems later in life. For instance, imagine someone cheats their way through medical school or an engineering degree. Would you want that person performing surgery on you? Or designing a bridge you drive over? The consequences of not having the necessary skills can be very serious, not just for the individual, but for society. Furthermore, it's important to consider personal integrity and ethical behavior. These are values that we should encourage in young people. There is a deep satisfaction that comes from earning your achievements honestly, knowing that you succeeded because of your own hard work and abilities. Allowing or excusing cheating sends the wrong message, that it's okay to take shortcuts, and that honesty doesn't matter as much as results. So, for me, the issue is clear. Cheating is wrong, it's harmful, and it goes against the very core of what education should be about.
Thank you both for those clear opening statements. Leo, you mentioned situations of extreme pressure or perceived unfairness. Maria, you've strongly emphasized the importance of fairness to others and personal integrity. Leo, could you describe a more specific scenario where you believe cheating might become more understandable, perhaps even a difficult choice for an otherwise honest student? And Maria, I'd then like you to respond to that specific situation and how you believe it should be handled.
Certainly, Sarah, let's consider a student, perhaps named Alex, who comes from a low-income family. Alex is very bright and has worked incredibly hard throughout school, understanding that education is the only way to a better future. Alex has a chance to get a crucial scholarship, one that would cover all university fees, but it depends on maintaining very high grades in every subject. Now imagine there's one particular subject where the teaching has been poor all year, or the exam is known to be unfairly difficult and doesn't reflect the curriculum. Alex has studied hard, sought help, but still feels unprepared for this specific, high-stakes exam, not due to lack of effort, but due to factors outside Alex's control. The pressure is immense. Failing this one exam could mean losing the scholarship, and with it, the dream of university and escaping poverty. In such a desperate situation, if Alex sees an opportunity to cheat on that single problematic exam, not to be lazy, but to overcome what feels like an insurmountable and unfair barrier, it becomes a very complex moral dilemma. It's not about wanting to be dishonest, but about fighting for a future that seems unjustly threatened by a flawed system.
Leo, that is indeed a very difficult and sympathetic scenario, and I understand the immense pressure Alex would be under. The situation you describe highlights serious issues within the educational system, such as unequal opportunities and potentially unfair assessment methods. However, even in such a heart-wrenching situation, I still believe that resorting to cheating is not the correct response. Compromising one's integrity, even for what seems like a justifiable reason at the time, can set a dangerous precedent for Alex's future behavior and moral compass. Instead of cheating, what are the alternatives? Alex could try to formally raise concerns about the exam's fairness with the school administration or the exam board, perhaps with support from parents or a mentor. Are there possibilities for academic support, tutoring, or even discussing the specific difficulties with the teacher, however unhelpful they may have seemed before? Perhaps there are advocacy groups or student unions that could help address the systemic unfairness of that particular exam or teacher. It's true that these paths are harder and success isn't guaranteed, but they maintain Alex's honesty and work towards a more just solution for everyone, not just one individual finding a way around the rules. Choosing to cheat, even in this tough case, ultimately still means Alex didn't earn that specific part of the qualification authentically.
These are very compelling points from both of you, highlighting the individual pressures and the ethical principles at stake. Let's now consider the broader consequences. Maria, what do you see as the long-term effects on society and education if cheating were to become more common, or in some cases, accepted? And Leo, do you believe that the potential benefits of cheating in the specific difficult situations you described could outweigh these potential long-term negative societal impacts?
Thank you, Sarah. The long-term effects of widespread cheating would be deeply damaging in my view. Firstly, there would be a significant devaluation of academic qualifications and degrees. If people believed that many graduates cheated their way through, diplomas and certificates would lose their meaning and credibility. This leads to an erosion of trust in professionals. Would you trust a doctor, an engineer, or a financial advisor if you suspected they hadn't genuinely mastered their field? Society relies on the expertise and integrity of its professionals, and widespread cheating would undermine that fundamental trust. Furthermore, if cheating becomes more accepted, it fosters a societal culture where people constantly look for shortcuts and ways to beat the system, rather than putting in the necessary effort and developing real competence. This also means a loss in the development of crucial life skills. The process of struggling with difficult material, solving problems, and persevering through challenges is where true learning and growth happen. If students simply cheat, they miss out on developing critical thinking, resilience, and a genuine understanding of the subject matter, which are vital for their future success and for a functioning society.
Maria, I certainly acknowledge the potential downsides you've described if cheating became rampant and accepted without question. That's not what I'm advocating for. A society where qualifications mean nothing would indeed be a problem. However, I think it's also important to consider the negative long-term effects of the current high-pressure education system itself. We see widespread student burnout, severe anxiety, and mental health issues, often driven by an excessive focus on grades and standardized testing over actual, meaningful learning. In this context, I believe that isolated incidents of cheating, especially when they are driven by a student's perception of necessity or systemic unfairness, are unlikely to cause a complete collapse of societal trust or academic value. The primary focus, in my opinion, should be on reforming the educational system to make it more equitable, supportive, and less about rote memorization for high-stakes exams. If we create an environment where students feel supported, where learning is engaging, and where assessments are fair and meaningful, the perceived need or temptation to cheat would naturally decrease. So while I don't dismiss the risks, I think the greater risk comes from maintaining a flawed system that pushes some students to desperate measures. To summarize my position, Sarah, while I agree that cheating is generally not ideal, I believe its acceptability, or at least understandability, is a complex issue with many shades of gray. It's not simply a case of right versus wrong in every single instance. We need to look at the context. I've tried to argue that in some specific cases, particularly when students face enormous systemic pressures, unfair assessments, or a lack of adequate support, cheating can be a very human response to an imperfect and overly demanding educational system. It might be a symptom of bigger problems that we, as a society, need to address within education. Therefore, instead of solely focusing on punishing students who cheat, I believe we should direct more energy towards creating a more supportive, fair, and understanding learning environment. An environment where students feel valued for their effort and learning, not just their grades, and where they don't feel that cheating is their only option to survive or succeed. My final thought is this: understanding the underlying reasons why students cheat is absolutely crucial if we want to address the problem effectively and compassionately, rather than just condemning the act itself.
In closing, I want to reiterate my firm belief that cheating is fundamentally wrong and has deeply detrimental effects, not only on the individual who cheats, but on their peers and on society as a whole. It undermines the very principles of honesty, hard work, and the genuine pursuit of knowledge and skills, which are the cornerstones of a meaningful education and a trustworthy society. While I understand that students can face pressures, as Leo has described, I do not believe these pressures excuse dishonest actions. The principles of academic integrity are not conditional. They are essential for fair competition and for the value of any qualification. Our call to action should be to consistently reinforce academic integrity in our schools and universities. We must actively encourage ethical behavior from a young age. And, importantly, we need to provide robust support systems for students so they can learn, overcome challenges, and succeed honestly without feeling the need to resort to deceit. My final thought is that the easy way, such as cheating, is very rarely the right way. It does not build true character, competence, or the kind of resilience needed for life's challenges.
Thank you both, Leo and Maria, for this incredibly insightful and engaging discussion today. You've given us a lot to think about. We've heard strong arguments on both sides of this complex issue. Leo highlighted the immense pressures students can face and how systemic issues in education might sometimes lead to difficult choices. Maria, you powerfully defended the importance of unwavering integrity, fairness to all students, and the intrinsic value of genuine learning and honest achievement. It's clear that there are no easy answers when we discuss whether cheating can ever be acceptable. We encourage our audience to reflect on the different perspectives and compelling arguments that Leo and Maria have presented here today. That concludes our broadcast. Thank you for joining us.